Welcome to Comic and Screen. I'm Sam Otten, and with me is Jason Book, and in this video we are very excited to give our spoiler-free review of Wonder Woman, the film directed by Patty Jenkins from Warner Brothers, starring Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. So we are going to try to keep this spoiler-free. We might have a few spoilers and details at the end of the video, but we will give you another warning before that happens. So we're going to first start generalist speaking, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, join us here for a few minutes while we talk about our review of Wonder Woman. So Jason, let me first start with just your emotional reaction to the movie and kind of how you felt coming out of the theater.
Well, whenever I see a comic book movie, because I've read them most of my life, I always kind of have that moment, if it's a movie that I like, where you kind of have that little twitch in your stomach or kind of like a, chill up your spine and things that remind you of the book or something that's handled really iconically. And this movie definitely delivered a few of those scenes. So to me, that really I knew I was watching a real Wonder Woman movie. As we said before on the show, it's tough to live up to even a dated show from the 70s that Linda Carter did. It was quite iconic. And I found myself in parts in the movie forgetting that I'm watching Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. We're just watching Wonder Woman. She did a good job of really conveying the different aspects of the character over the years, whether it was the animated or the TV show and all the books. So I was quite surprised. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it really kind of transported me to that different place and time, and I thought it was quite solid.
Yeah, I also on first viewing I felt pretty good, felt very satisfied leaving the theater. The storytelling is very kind of direct and straightforward, where it's like, okay, we're going to follow this character, things move forward in a very clear manner, we know where it's going, we know where it's headed, which is good. It makes it kind of, even on first viewing, it makes it pretty easy to get on board and, follow the threads that they're bringing through. And so that makes for a very satisfied feeling at the end of it, and I think that's how my whole kind of theater felt. It seemed like it was well received. But I agree with you. I mean, it really felt like, wow, we have a definitive Wonder Woman. We have some iconic scenes that immediately kind of stand out as almost like instant classics. Like, wow, that's going to be a defining moment in the cultural mind frame about what Wonder Woman is. So it's just, overall, there was kind of just this excitement of wow, they've really done something with this film that I think is going to be remembered, and for a new generation of people who don't know the 1970s show, this will just immediately be oh, this gives them a vision of Wonder Woman, a feel of Wonder Woman, and some iconic moments to remember and connect to the Wonder Woman character.
Yeah, totally. I agree with everything you said there.
So let's go through a few things. So, I mean, one of the main things here would be the characters. So we have, Diana. It's really her story. It's from her perspective. Patty Jenkins, the director, said that she really wanted to have a clear point of view of seeing things through Diana's eyes, like her relationship with the Amazons through her eyes, and then going to man's world through her eyes, and then going through the main tensions and plot. But we're always really able to put ourselves in Diana's shoes and see things how she's seeing them. So she's obviously the main character, and then we have Chris Pine playing Steve Trevor. The two of them, having a lot of scenes together where they have the chemistry going on. So what's your reaction to those two main characters, kind of, who are the centerpiece of the movie?
It was really good. It was like what I thought it should be. As I said before on the show, I wanted it to have that reverse feeling of Captain America and Peggy Carter. It had that vibe to it. I really liked it. Very different because it was World War One, but you got it that they were into each other and that they were slowly getting to know each other. And there were some great scenes where they're getting to know each other during the travel to man's world. That I thought had nice comedic value, and you need it in these kind of superhero movies because sometimes they fall flat when they don't have those moments of these people aren't going to go on this journey together and just not have a laugh too. You have to laugh at the absurdity of what's going on. It's not an everyday thing, right? So I thought those were handled really well, and I believed it by the end of the movie that they really, were into each other that much, and it was handled very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think they really developed the relationship. And like you said, the humor was important because that's part of how people connect with each other, is if they can laugh together and have those kind of moments. And it was not forced humor. It was humor that came from Diana wondering about his world and him wondering about her world. So it was very natural in the story, place to have humor come out. And it's kind of, Chris Pine, I think, does well at having that kind of charm and, just connecting with people that way. But then they also bonded over the action and the threat and danger that they went through together. So that can really bring people close together. They have a mission that they're going on, they have dangers, they help each other, they survive, different battles.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, I was seeing lots of different ways in which, yeah, these people would be forming a very strong relationship, personal connection with each other because look what they've gone through. And they also have these conversations and these lighter moments with each other to connect on a different level.
Yeah, and they also handled really well that like she came from a different world if this is how we settled things or whatever, and they really showed the difference between how we would handle things in our world and we did in history versus if you grew up on an island with only women. Like that,
Hmm.
you come at it from a totally different perspective, and the movie really represented both worlds that way very well.
Hmm. So speaking of the world, so let's talk about the settings. We had Themyscira, we have Man's World, we have World War One. What was your kind of overall impression of the different locations, without giving too much away, but just the locations and how those played into the movie overall?
Well, Themyscira was handled perfectly, I thought, the setting and everything, except for, we'll get into a little bit more. I thought a couple of the presentations of the fight scenes and the slow-mo was overused a little bit, but other than that, I have no complaints about how the setting was for Themyscira at all. It looked like it reminded me of the animated series, or sorry, the animated cartoon a couple of years ago, which was high praise because I thought that was a really good DC animated movie, and just they handled it in the same way, but it brought it to life. And then when you got to Man's World, they really made it like really colorless on purpose and quite
Hmm.
dour. At first, I thought
Hmm.
it was too much, but it did suit it because for two reasons. It is war, so they were really,
Hmm.
kind of punching that home that, how dour everything was. But it's what I predicted. When you finally got to see Wonder Woman's costume, it made the colors pop even more. So I could see that as an artistic choice as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, people have complained about some comic book movies like not having enough color. This one, you have lots of color when it's appropriate, and then they kind of strip away the color when it's appropriate.
Yeah,
And you can tell that it's for storytelling purposes.
that's
So,
right.
like, if you complain about this, then it's just you're not understanding the story that they're trying to tell and the contrast that they're trying to make.
That's right.
And then in terms of the action, one thing I really liked about the action was that it was really situated in the settings.
Hmm.
Like, it wasn't just, oh, we'll have a battle scene here, but I could have taken it and put it anywhere. It's like, no, the battle scenes, the action scenes really had a sense of location to them. And there's a few
Hmm.
different locations throughout the movie, and each time it's like, wow, they're really connecting it to the setting and to the plot, and everything's kind of interlocking together for all the elements of the story making.
Yeah, totally. Like the action scenes had their place in the movie very well, and like it really went at the right pace for that, and it felt like these things, like you're saying, needed to happen where they happened, and except for some things we may get into later, I was quite pleased with how they did all of it.
Yeah, and good choreography for the fights, I think. But yeah, you mentioned slow mo in the fights, so I was going to let you say a little bit more about that because overall, I think the action choreography was really good. The Amazons had a cool fluid motion to them, and lots of really great stuff like that. But not necessarily perfect. You had some thoughts on the action there.
Yeah, well, just to give it some praise first, what I really thought was great was that they really started the beginning of the movie saying they wanted to show that Diana needs to be the best of the best. So when she's getting trained, and then you see it come together as the movie goes, when she's in some of those great fight scenes we've seen in the trailer, she's a badass. Like she's kicking ass, man. It's what people have always wanted to see. And as an aside too, it's like the first female comic book movie where it's really centered about her, and to see her come out there and really like be able to just take anybody down is very cool. It gives a character
Hmm.
its due. But getting back to the action, when we first got to one of the scenes in Themyscira, the fight scene, as soon as we had some slow mo right away, it was just they started using it a little bit too much for my liking. It goes
Hmm.
back to 300. They were one of the first movies to do it, maybe The Matrix before that. I just would have liked to see a few less scenes of it because I found myself in the scenes when it would pop up and later when Wonder Woman was fighting. It took me out of the fight for a second because I'm kind of watching the slow mo and like, okay, how long is this frame rate or whatever? Getting a little technical here, but I just
Hmm.
find that I make the analogy to basketball sometimes. There's too many 3-point shots these days. If you do a little less slow motion, it makes it a little more special too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, and this is, kind of probably to personal taste, right? Like some people might have liked just the right amount of slow mo. For other people, it might have been, it's a little too much slow mo, kind of like Goldilocks problem. So I can see what you're saying. For me, there were some moments where it's like, man, I was really glad that it was in slow mo to
Yeah,
see certain things happening. But yeah, I could definitely see where somebody's coming from. Is like, you maybe could have taken out 20% of the slow mo shots and still had the good effect of the ones that were left.
yeah, like not to give anything away, but if there's a fight in one of the battles where they're using a different weapon or something that you didn't expect to happen. That's a cool slow-mo part because you didn't expect it coming up. Lets the movie, that moment, hang for a bit and then goes back to normal.
We want to get into a few more things, but we are going to touch on some spoilers here. So just as a warning, if you have not seen the movie yet, you don't want any spoilers, go ahead and stop now. We hope you see it and enjoy the movie. We want to just get into a few more things here that might give away a few details. So one of them is some of the emotional moments. So Diana has to go through some emotions. So, okay, spoiler alert. At the beginning, when Antiope gets killed, that's a very emotional moment for Diana. There's a death later in the movie as well, emotional moments for Diana. And Gal Gadot overall, I think, really embodied the character. And like you said, you could kind of lose yourself in being Wonder Woman. But she's still not a top-tier dramatic actress. And there are a couple of these really emotional moments, or there's some moments where she gets really angry. And she pulls them off, but she doesn't like nail them like an Oscar winner or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, the better she gets at these kind of roles, we're going to see her acting obviously develop and hone her craft more. It's just that really, when you think about it, she's been in movies like Fast and the Furious and stuff. I'm not sure about her movie career before she came to American films, but I'm pretty sure she didn't have tons of major, dramatic movies with like A-list actors, and she just needs to kind of stretch that a little bit more. But what she did handle really well was like the compassion that Wonder Woman has for all people, and in the action scenes. Well, I remember when we used to speculate on it, I kind of was wondering if I could believe that she could really kick ass being like a real kind of thin waif supermodel body. Well, she really owned it. Like, you believed it in those scenes, and she had that really good intense look in her face before she went into each battle, or she was really kind of angry at how things were in the world. They really handled that well. So there might be a couple things she could do better, but overall, I really was, believing she was this character, and that's what you need to do in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the movie rides on her performance, and she does it. It works.
Yeah.
There's a couple spots where it's sort of like, oh, she's kind of indicating a little bit or didn't quite nail it, but she carries the movie. She carries the action. She carries the connection with Steve Trevor. She carries so much of it really, really well. So,
yeah.
But with that much screen time, there's going to be a couple moments, where it maybe wasn't perfect, but
exactly.
she did a great job, though.
For sure.
And then the other stuff we wanted to talk about was at the very end. So it builds to Act 3, and then we get the final reveal of Ares, and then there's the big fight with Ares. And I enjoyed this fight, but I will admit on my first viewing, I loved Act 1, I loved Act 2, and then Act 3 I thought was okay. On my second viewing, I actually liked Act 3 quite a bit more. I kind of saw how it all was building more, and I got into it more. But on my first viewing, Act 3 was the weaker link of a great movie. But what were your thoughts on kind of the final battle with Ares?
Yeah, mine's kind of like with your first viewing, because honestly, I really, really enjoyed the movie, and any kind of critique I'm giving it are just little things here and there. But a third act is a big deal in the superhero movie, and we are getting to that point because we've seen so many that it is getting a little formulaic and generic. And to be fair to this movie, Wonder Woman really did things a little bit different than other superhero movies have, because her origin is different, and she's a female superhero. So I think they could have had something a little bit different at the end to make this, stand out a little bit more. But they also get into those trappings of the superhero movie, and they had this in here. The reveal of Ares was cool in a way, because I thought, well, it's not who you expected it to be. But I've seen the guy in a lot of movies, and I really didn't find him that believable as like the big bad guy. I find him more of a string puller as an actor, He's a very good actor. But the fight scene just did remind me of kind of like a video game boss battle in ways. Some of the actual fighting was really good and stuff, but there was a little too much CG going on. They really showed Wonder Woman having the strength to be able to pick up big things and throw it away and stuff, and kind of her powers almost growing. I love that aspect of it, but it just was a little bit generic at the end. It didn't ruin the movie for me or make the movie fall flat at all, but it just kind of, to me, the rest of the movie was in such high quality and being of a different style that I would have liked to see them just continue that for the last act of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really, Act 3 is only a letdown in the sense that the stuff before it was so good.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, for me, I did like the design of Ares, of him having the carnage of mankind creates his armor and his weapons. I'm like, oh, that's kind of fitting, that the God of War like feeds off of all the destruction that men have caused around him, and that literally comes and forms on him. So there was cool stuff, and I do think you did need a big cathartic moment for like Diana's love to kind of empower her and finally defeat Ares. So
Hmm.
it did its job. So overall, lots of good things. Kind of end on a downer note, but really overall, we really liked the movie.
Hmm.
I'm gonna see it again. I got even more out of it the second time. So thanks for talking with me about it, and we'll do some more talking about some of our favorite scenes in a few days.
Perfect. Sounds good.